Welcome to Turn Talks, the podcast that bridges the gaps between college and career. Join your host, Tina Fox, founder of Turn Mentoring, as she brings together corporate leaders, educators, and university alumni to share practical wisdom and equip you with confidence, clarity, and connection.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Turn Talks. I'm Tina Fox, the founder and CEO of Turn Mentoring. So these sticky notes behind me, they aren't decor. They're actually from today's conversations with real college students. And with each one of these notes is a worry, a hope, a question, and honestly, they're important questions for which many of these students are still seeking answers. And I've noticed that when a student is in school, and they're still in post-secondary, and whether they're a first year, fourth year, fifth year, a student's sphere of influence is typically what I call the 3 Ps. It's the professors, their peers, and their parents. Now, professors absolutely care. They do an amazing job with all the things that they have to manage on campus, but their bandwidth is real. They might have hundreds of students they're dealing with. They might also be doing research reports. They've got other activities that they volunteer for on college campuses, like business fraternities and different areas that they are trying to connect in for themselves. The peers are often in the same boat as the students who are seeking these answers to the big questions of their life. And parents, I'm a parent, we give advice, but it doesn't always land or apply. I mean, I think the statistics are that once a student gets to be, somewhere in their early teens, they're almost done listening to advice from parents, and they're really seeking it from outside sources. So students are often surrounded by lots and lots of people, and yet they still feel alone in these big questions. So why do I hear these real conversations? What's my vantage point? Well, because of my role as a public speaker, I'm a university guest lecturer and former College of Business board chair. I have had the privilege of meeting and connecting with thousands of students in college. Sometimes I'm waiting to speak, and I might be sitting in a public space filled with different students from all over campus, and I get to overhear students processing their real life. Oftentimes they're, in banter, talking to each other. But I can tell that the guidance is often missing because everyone's in the same boat. They're all trying to figure it out at the same time. If you were a student, you probably remember those days where you're kind of pitching things, ideas back and forth, and there's a lot of wondering and not a lot of clarity. I was recently on a college campus, and I had about 20 minutes in between meetings, and I was listening to a group of students who were right next to me. And, I was just doing some work, but I heard a 5th year student who was really talking about networking and having to carry a lot of what she'd been doing on her own. She was putting herself through school. Her time was stretched. She was working a couple of jobs. She was exhausted. She didn't really have any warm intros, yet she was moving herself to the stage to pick up her diploma. And she also mentioned to her friend that she is someone who comes from a large family. Her parents did not have the means to afford all of the children college. They did the best that they could, but it was really up to them to figure it out with scholarships and loans and to work in order to get themselves through school. Hence why she was a 5th year student, because she's had to do this in pieces. And her friend was sitting there, and I could tell that, he was definitely being a great listener to her. And in her comments of, if I had to do this all over again, I would have done a little bit more as far as getting involved in activities on campus. I definitely would have sought out more adults in my life. I would have sat into professor hours in their office hours to find out from them, some of the things that I still have questions about. And she says, I feel like the hours the time through the hourglass, are just running so quickly. And I feel like I missed an opportunity. And in her friend listening, I could tell that he was processing what she was saying because he still had another year left at school. And so, her recognition and failure in networking, as she stated, was something that she was regretting at that present moment. And so he was listening and processing, but I felt really bad because I know what that feels like to have done all of that work and to yet still feel like there's something missing in this next transition period of life. But for her and all these other students who may be feeling the same way, the network gap is not a talent gap. This is not because of something that they have or have not done. They're busy doing things all the time. Students, their schedules, if you ever look at a student's schedule between work and extracurricular activities and all of their classes, getting to and from the campus, it's a very busy schedule. So as I was listening to this fifth year student, I was thinking that your success is not only about what you know, which is actually the comment that her friend had made. He had said, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. And she said, yeah, you're right about that. But there really wasn't anything beyond that as to, and this is how you should get to know people. But it is about who you know, but it's also about who can help you translate what you know into an opportunity. And so this is where, mentorship could be that key in providing another P to the original three of parent, peer, and professor. You could have another person and a professional that are coming into your life to support you in these important questions and to augment your network. So I was listening to these students and I was thinking, over all the years when I go in and speak to audience of students, the talks that seem to resonate the most are about my failures. And I often tell a story about my major failure. Literally, I picked the wrong major. I tell that story because I hear a lot of students who have tremendous fear about having wasted their time on choosing a major that they are not so inclined to see themselves doing work in after school, but it's too late to change. It's too much money. They can't tell their parents about this because they know how much their parents have sacrificed in order to get them into school and paying for it. And so there's a lot of pressure on these students. And I share with them, when I was a student at my alma mater, I had chosen the lane of business. And I was thinking maybe marketing management. I hadn't quite figured it out yet. And of course, you have to take all these prereqs, right, when you're going into a major. And one of the prereqs I had to take was accounting. And it turns out I was absolutely terrible at accounting. I failed the class. And what's interesting is I wasn't used to failing classes. I was used to being a very good student, but I just was not getting it. I was not figuring this out. And, I tell the students that although I failed that class, it made me ask new questions about, well, what should I be looking at? What are my talents and skills? And, I was still a sophomore. I was able to go and sit down and talk to my advisor, and he gave me great advice. He was like, well, do you feel as though you still need to continue in business? What do you want to do in business? At the time, I wasn't quite sure. And he said, well, why don't we get you in communications? Why don't we get you into something that is a degree in which you seem that you might be able to excel in, in interpersonal connection, communication. And I said, oh, that sounds really interesting. And when I started to float over to that side of campus, I found my people. And I really enjoyed my major after that. But I often also tell students that the real fact of the day is that less than 27% of us who graduated in a major actually do work that is directly aligned to our major. So life has its way of bringing you around and through and back and up and over, and you end up where you end up. And so skills can always be learned. Reinvention of self is really important. And they find value in that because it gives them hope. And that's a big job of a mentor, is to just give hope. Because not everything ends at graduation. It's really where life begins, right? And I also share a story of a song that I think is hysterical. There's a group called AJR, and in that song, it says 100 bad days means 100 good stories, and 100 good stories makes you interesting at parties. And when I heard that years ago, I thought, that's right. That's right. We often tell the more interesting stories are the ones where we crashed and burned, but we're still here, and we're still here to tell about it. And we're able to share what that experience was like in our life. So for the mentors who may be listening, what have you experienced in life that's come to serve you in knowledge? Because those are the gold nuggets that students are digging for. And sometimes they just don't know how to ask. So when you are authentic and you lower your defenses, it really opens up into a real relationship with students. Another story, and I'm getting these stories from a lot of these Post-it notes, is, I don't feel confident to talk to strangers, is what I hear. But I hear it not just from the students, I hear it from both sides. I hear it from both the alumni mentors, and I hear it from the student mentees. And interestingly, the mentors are worried about what they're going to share, what they're going to ask. And the students are worried about, well, what am I going to say? And how am I going to sound professional? And the best part about mentorship is that it's not an interview. It's just a conversation with a new person who can bring fresh insights and perspectives. So we do have a solve for this at Turn Mentoring. We keep it very simple because we do not believe it needs to be overly complicated. But just, a practical takeaway for people who are wondering, what am I going to say? What am I going to ask? There are 3 questions that can get us through a lot of different conversations. And the first question that I asked myself when I was going back to speak to a group of college students was, what did I wish I had known in college? That list is long. And so I had to pare it down and I had to make it more relevant. But I'm pretty sure that there were lots of things as a mentor that we wished we had known in college. The second question is, what's something that you've learned the hard way? Again, talking about failures really helps bring down the walls and opens it up to a larger conversation. And then another question that I think could really help move things along and provide some momentum is, if you were me, what would you do in the next 30 days? And these are questions, students can ask that question by sharing of themselves as to what they're dealing with. And if they're not sure what the next step is, asking a mentor, what would you do in the next 30 days would maybe help provide some level of guidance and direction. So, what is this whole mentorship thing for? It's a place where students can try on questions that their peers can't answer. I talked to you about the, 5th year student. She was sharing her regrets, but he really didn't have anything to offer her as to where to go or what to do. And he was definitely taking it in. The parents may have already answered. I know that I've given unsolicited advice to my children. But I also know that they can't remember everything that I said, nor do they even listen to everything that I say. So, parents, we're doing the best we can, but sometimes it's just falling on deaf ears. And the professors that are out there, again, these 3 Ps, right? The peers, the parents, and the professors. Professors are there for students, but they could also be serving hundreds of students per semester. So mentorship air support is not a bad thing for university students. For a mentor, the role of a mentor is really to show up because they can and they're willing to help. And that is the beauty of me having the privilege to work with so many mentors, is that these are people who have just gone before and they want to serve a version of their younger self. And it's as pure as it gets. As several students I recently dined with stated, the other thing about mentors is I come to realize after meeting with them and talking to them, they're just people too. And so it really has helped me not feel stressed out about being in a job interview situation or having to take a test in a class. It's really just about having a conversation with another human. And so students were starting to recognize that although they might have felt a little uncomfortable in this scenario of matching them with a mentor, they felt very comfortable after they had gone through the program. And, sometimes the most powerful thing isn't necessarily the advice itself. It's just listening so that someone can be heard. And I think that is where a lot of students have found a sense of belonging in their mentorship relationship, is that they just felt heard and they felt like they belonged to a larger community. So my message to students in all of this is, you're not alone and you don't have to have it all figured out. You just need to take it one step at a time. Life is in the living and it's in the learning. You've been learning a lot. So just stay curious, ask a bunch of questions, and keep moving forward. My dream as a founder, so that I'm working really hard to try to do my best to help you. My dream as a founder of Turn Mentoring is to connect with your university leaders and with your alumni, so that you not only graduate with a diploma, but you're provided a mentor in this journey from collegiate to career. And then my message to you mentors out there, mentorship does not need to be a lifetime commitment. It does not need to be overly formal. I had been asked to be a mentor to students as I was going to classes and meeting up with different students. And Part of the reason I started Turn was because there are so many students who want mentors, and I'm only one person. So being able to live my legacy through mentorship, I found that there were others that wanted to do the same. And I created a space for all of this to come together in a very practical way. But it doesn't need to be overly formal, and you don't have to have all the answers as a mentor. What students truly want, they want to be heard, and they want to know what they said mattered. I think that is a human condition, to be honest with you. They also want someone to bounce ideas off of. Oftentimes I'm talking to a lot of young students who have great big ideas. And as a mentor, I have learned that their great big ideas spur more great big ideas in me. They just have a different way of looking at things. They think faster. They were born in the age of tech all the time. And, now they're having to deal with the cutting edge of AI, and they're going to be leveraging AI far more than generations previous to them. So they are just a great source of knowledge. But they're also seeking a source of knowledge. What we bring to them is something unique and different in our own journey. And they're also seeking a connection that they don't find in online feeds, where many times that's where they are spending their connecting hours is on online feeds. They want something that's a little bit more real and tangible. So we aren't anti-AI, but at the same time, we are pro-human. And mentorship gives us that opportunity to be pro-human. So if you aren't sure how to connect, or if you want to discuss, how you as an alumnus may be able to engage with students at your alma mater, you can always contact us at info@turn, TERN, mentoring.com. So until the next episode of Turn Talks, keep moving, keep asking, by all means, keep connecting. And those sticky notes that are behind me, they're not problems, they're potential, and they're waiting for you to help. All right, have a great one. Chat with you soon.
Thank you for listening to Turn Talks. To learn more about our robust mentoring platform, visit us at turnmentoring.com. Join us next time for more enlightening conversations.